Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Positive Post in Conversation. I'm your co-host, Zazie Todd. I'm joined, as always, by my friend and colleague and co-host, Kristi Benson. How are you today, Kristi?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm good too, and I'm super excited because we have the most amazing guest today. I'm really thrilled to invite Lisa Skavinsky from Dog Educated to chat with us. So Lisa is the owner of Dog Educated in Rochester, New York, where she specializes in classes, workshops, and private consults for dog owners. She's deeply invested in animal welfare, one of the reasons we're so thrilled to chat with her. So she participates at the local community level, as well as holding a seat on the Pet Professional Guild's Shelter and Rescue Committee. Lisa studied with behavior expert Jean Donaldson at the Academy for Dog Trainers, and she's also a certified separation anxiety trainer and fear-free certified. And frankly, she is one of the best dog trainers I know. So I'm especially thrilled that we get to chat with her. So Lisa, how did you get into dog training in the first place?
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited about it. I went into dog training, I went into study animal learning and behavior because I was really heavily involved in local rescue. And we were struggling to find people to give us behavior support for starters for the dogs that were in our care. And then, the other issue being just this never ending stream of dogs needing foster homes, needing adoptive homes. So we started talking about what if we could do more outreach in addition to fostering and rehoming dogs. What if we could do more to keep dogs in their homes? What if we could do more to prevent, dogs being relinquished to shelters and rescues, and kind of support owners where the problems are occurring? So I went straight to the Academy for Dog Trainers for the behavior side, because Jean Donaldson does that wonderful shelter and rescue. Once a year, she does the shelter and rescue scholarship. I did not get the scholarship, but she was gracious enough to invite me to join anyway. And so that's where it started. And then, of course, years of study and work. And, at that point, I decided to actually be a dog trainer. So here we are today.
So today we're talking about resource guarding, like dogs who guard objects or their food or their beds. And I think you are like a prime person to talk to about this because you take so many aggression cases. And also I think like you're in a community where you are really sort of alone amongst a lot of trainers who would have a very different approach, who would sort of be using aversive tools and techniques. And so you often are dealing with dogs who are kind of traumatized as well as having this really natural behavior. So I'm very excited that we get to hear your thoughts on this. And I think our audience is also just going to be, I mean, this is going to be really enriching for us all in the dog trade. So just as a, so we all know what resource guarding looks like as dog trainers, but our audience isn't all dog trainers, or they might be sort of new trainers. So what do you see when you're looking at a dog? How do you diagnose resource guarding? Like what do you see?
Yeah. So the first thing is threat signals. It's not always threat signals, of course. We see more, as Jean sometimes calls it, passive guarding, where a dog might, if you approach when they have a bone, they might pick up the bone and kind of quietly carry it away. But I don't get calls. I don't get inquiries for behavior support for passively guard objects. It's really the threat signals. It's, growling, snarling, freezing, hard eye, sometimes air snaps, sometimes actual bites. And that's usually when the person reaches out to me. And of course, that's when they have something of value, whether it's at their food bowl or the usual suspects, things like bully sticks and marrow bones and raw hides and all those kind of things that kick in that primal, because they are gross carcassy things. But I've had clients that have guarded everything from paper towels and tissues, which is an interesting one because I see it a lot. And I'm not sure what the adaptive significance of Kleenex are for dogs, but it is something I see a lot. And the number one thing I see, at least the most intensively guarded thing, is usually vomit, dog vomit. So,
Yeah.
What dogs guard, locations, people, food, objects is all across the board. But what it looks like is always very similar. And that's a dog that when somebody approaches or reaches toward them, when they have something of value or they're with somebody or in a location that's valuable to them, they may freeze, growl, snarl, air snap, any of those things. So
I think my favorite is Soleil, one of our dogs, guards from, not from people, but from other dogs, other dogs who have something. So if a dog is chewing something, she'll go lay in front of them and just be like, "Hi, I love you." And then any other dog who walks by, she's like, "I'll just do this job for you."
it's funny how it presents in different dogs and how it looks. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because we can laugh about it and we all know quite a lot about it. But for an ordinary person whose dog starts growling or snapping or even trying to bite them, when they reach towards their food bowl, for example, they can have quite an emotional response to that, which is completely understandable. So what do your clients say to you about how they feel when that happens, and how do you counsel them about it?
Usually in our initial consultation, I actually put a lot of time into that emotional response, because it is a big feel when, and you see kind of a variety of emotional responses from owners. A lot of the time, it's understandably when animals with sharp pointy teeth show them to us, that can push buttons in us. We know that can make us feel very uncomfortable, very afraid. It's supposed to. So that can be hard. So I get certainly owners that panic right away when they see growling. But I also see some guardians who are very almost as if they're hurt. They take it kind of personally, and you can kind of understand that too, right? I gave you a home. I gave you that bully stick. Like, I'm giving you a good life. Why are you growling at me? And of course, you get worries when you have small children in the home. So for families that have, if it's not just an adult or two, if you've got small children, there's a little bit of panic about that as well. So, the first thing I do is to normalize the behavior. Most dogs come with some degree of that genetic software. As Gene always says, that, the poor dog's saddled with this behavior software. And I like that way of saying it. And it does kind of give a light bulb moment to most of my clients. Just to understand that, dogs, if they were in the natural world, they would guard 100% of their food. But it's not been that long since they were domesticated. Some of that genetic stuff comes with them. And even though they're fed free in a bowl, this is what dogs do. When they have something of value and somebody approaches or comes near, life or death circuitry can kind of fire in their head, and it's a reflex. So when they growl, when they show us their teeth, when they do those things, it's upsetting. But here's the good news. This is the only way dogs have to kind of communicate their need for social distance, to say, hey, I'm super uncomfortable. I need you to stay away from me and my super important stuff. And it's actually a very appropriate way for dogs to communicate the need for social distance. They can't write a letter to the editor, right? They can't say, excuse me, they can't use words. So for dogs, the way they communicate is to show their teeth, to say, please stay away. It's actually their way of preventing this conflict from turning into a physical confrontation. So it's good news. It's counterintuitive. So when you tell, dog guardians, not only is it prognostically favorable, like we want dogs that are going to tell us, don't come any closer, I need space. That prevents us from getting bitten. It allows us to move through a training plan where we teach them that even though they have something wonderful, when we approach or reach towards something, it predicts something terrific. So not only is it prognostically favorable, but it's normal. It's super normal. And yes, it's going to make us feel uncomfortable, and it feels counterintuitive to thank your dog for growling. But it's, the presence of threat signals, their ability to communicate with us is what keeps us safe. It keeps them from getting any more problems on their rap sheet. And it protects the training. It's good for the training, so that their body language, their communication, the very normal dog communication they do, is going to allow us to change these things, to work through a training plan. We're going to use that body language as kind of a barometer of how to move through our training plan. So once we kind of normalize the fact that this is how normal dogs communicate, and once we say this, it's a terrific thing that they're willing to communicate, because that's going to help us change it, everybody seems to feel a little bit better about it.
Good, good. And I love how you normalize both the dog's behavior in that situation, but also people's response of feeling unsettled or unhappy or scared by it, because that's a completely normal response too. But obviously safety is an issue, or a potential issue, with resource guarding. So what are the most important things for dog guardians to do to help ensure that everybody stays safe?
Yeah, there's a few things we can do. We're really big on using management to protect the training. So not only will using management make sure we're not making the dog uncomfortable and setting us back in the training plan, but it's also going to keep, lower the risk of anybody getting any injuries. And again, lower the risk of the dog doing something that's going to make the rap sheet a little bit longer. So the first thing is, depending on what the situation is, if it's food bowl guarding, for instance, we'll tell people until we start the training, until we're ready to do that, let's just leave the dog alone when he's got a bowl of food, put the food down, close the door. If dogs are, if it's dog resource guarding with food, feed them in separate rooms. And when they're finished, pick up the bowls before you reunite them. Really simple steps we can do to prevent altercations and to kind of protect the training that we're going to do. If it's something like object guarding for bully sticks or toys, preferred objects and items, we like to do the bait and switch thing. So if your dog has, first of all, if the item they have, it's, not going to hurt them, it's not something valuable to you that's going to get ruined, you have the option of doing nothing, just giving them space. And once they move away from the object, picking it up and putting it away. But if it is something that's dangerous to them or valuable to you, I always tell folks, grab a big fistful of something super high value, cheese or steak or something yummy, and go over and just toss it off to the side. Nice fistful of food right off to the side. And once their dog comes off of the object and starts gobbling up the food, just very quietly pick it up and put it away. Don't make any big deal about it. Just kind of scoop it up, get it out of the way. I do tell people this is management. That is not training. It's actually the opposite of our training plan, where our reach and our approach comes first, but we need to do that in a very specific way. So for management, if they've got something, it's going to hurt them, or you don't want them to have it for any reason, throw something delicious off to the side, wait till they come off, and then quietly put it away. So those are good ways to keep them safe. And of course, there's always muzzle conditioning for the training. If we've got a dog that bites with an injurious mouth, so, we see punctures or that type of thing, then we're going to want to first condition the dog to a muzzle so that they feel great wearing it, so that we can then really safely practice. Because if, we do end up making the dog uncomfortable or push too far in the training plan too soon, we don't want to elicit a bite. So for dogs that have a bite history, and that's why they're contacting us, they've bitten over this resource guarding before, we'll usually we'll condition them first to a muzzle, and we'll use the muzzle as management and for safety while we do the training.
That actually leads into our next question, which was about this idea of safety and bite pressure. And so I think as sort of dog behavior, as people with dog behavior expertise, we can sort of forget that, we have this curse of knowledge about what dangerous actually means to us and how we assess danger. So in particular, I wanted you to sort of talk a bit about acquired bite inhibition and how not all bites are the same and how that sort of impacts your practice.
Right. That's one of those things, along with whether or not they communicate normally with threat signals, which is a good prognostic indicator. If I have a dog that says, okay, back off in a very normal doggy way, that's a good thing, because we know how to move through the training plan and we know how to back off when they need us to. But also the ABI, how hard does a dog bite? What's the pressure of that bite when they put teeth on a person or another dog? So getting a good sense of how injurious the mouth is. So if I have a dog that has guarded his food bowl or guarded his toy or whatever it is they're guarding, and sometimes they'll say he's bitten my husband 3 times, and he bit Tommy, our 11-year-old son, right on the hand. And the first question I ask is, what was the damage done? Were there any, scratches? Was there any skin break? Were there any tooth punctures? And a lot of time, oh no. But just the fact that the dog put teeth on is terrifying to people. So I love to be able to deliver the good news that, okay, your dog's got really good acquired bite inhibition, meaning when they put teeth on, they're not doing it to maim. And that's a hard thing for dogs to do. Those teeth are, they've got powerful jaws, they've got sharp teeth. If they're pulling their punches like that, this is the best news in the world. So the best prognosis is, first of all, a compliant client who is going to follow the management and not push the dog, a dog that communicates when they need some distance, and a dog that's got a really soft mouth. So sometimes unfortunately, it's not a soft mouth. Sometimes it's a dog that when they put teeth on. And so in that case, we're going to be a lot more careful, probably a little bit more conservative with our training plan, but we're also going to make sure we get a muzzle on board because how hard a dog bites really does change the prognostics a little bit. So yeah.
Great.
We want dogs that they may bite, they may snap, they might even put teeth on, but they're not doing any damage. That's a good thing. And I, explaining to people that not all dogs do that. Your dog has a good mouth. That's really good news. Is a nice thing to be able to say when we are. And it usually is the case.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So we're chatting with Lisa Skavinsky of Dog Educated in Rochester, New York, all about resource guarding. And what you just said about a good mouth, actually, that applies to my little dog. I have a Shih Tzu called Pepper, who's a senior. And we adopted him a couple of years ago when he was 10. And he had a lot of dental work. So he definitely has a good mouth because they had unfortunately had to extract quite a lot of his teeth when he went into the care of the BCS-PCA because he had a lot of health issues, including dental ones. But when he first came to live with us, I fed him his first meal and I noticed a little freeze as I put the food bowl down, but I forgot to tell my husband and we were kind of busy and I just totally forgot to mention it. And I wasn't there the next meal time when he went to feed Pepper. And he told me later that he had put the food bowl down and he had walked away into the kitchen and Pepper had followed him, growling, followed him quite some way, and then stopped and just stayed there and growled at him for quite a while before eventually going off to eat. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's resource guarding. But it was quite easy for us to resolve. And of course, my husband knew that he mustn't yell at him for growling or he knew what not to do because he lives with me. He knows a lot about dogs. And Pepper has a good mouth anyway, and we resolved it quite quickly. But we know that with little dogs, sometimes people will just laugh at a little dog for growling, I think, or they may not be so worried. So what do you think are the differences in how people respond to it in little dogs compared to big dogs?
I think across the board, not just with resource guarding, but in so many ways, I think people don't take it seriously. I've seen small dogs. I've seen a King Charles Cavalier that does a level 4 bite for resource guarding. So it's important for people to understand that little dogs can still do damage. But I do think it's sad because I think they're a little bit less across the board. You don't just walk over and scoop up a 90-pound Mastiff. That wouldn't be possible and nobody would dare try it. But you can certainly do it to a Shih Tzu or a tiny Chihuahua. And I fear a lot. I always think, imagine standing there and all of a sudden just being swooped up by a giant. And I think it's just such an incredible, just a lack of concern for their anonymity, I can't quite explain what I'm trying to say. I think across the board, we don't take small dogs seriously. We laugh at them when they growl, or we just go, oh, whatever, because we have power over them. It's a little, they're not intimidating to many people. So I do worry sometimes that people ignore uncomfortable behavior or threat signals or all the warning signs from small dogs. And that can certainly ratchet it up till we do get a bite. Whereas the first time your German Shepherd growls at you by the food bowl, you might take it a little more seriously, and I think it's just perception. And it's just looking at it from our perspective rather than thinking about the animal in front of us. So yeah, it's unfortunate. But I do get an awful, I would say a large number of my, not that, all dogs, of course, can do, resource guarding is a normal dog behavior. We see it in all breeds of dog, but I see it in a lot of small dogs. And I think it's at least 50% of my caseload for resource guarding.
I wonder how much of that is like sort of human breeding thing, just going off on a tangent in my mind. You would notice and not necessarily breed a dog who resource guard against you if you were a breeder if they were 100 pounds. But a little dog, there's not the same selection pressure, I guess, as like breeders perhaps. But I do agree.
Maybe more of them get through the cracks, more guarders.
And people do just sort of laugh. We all laughed at the thought of Pepper following Zazie's husband. So we're also implicated. But I think like the
We're
thing
all
that,
animals behaving.
yeah, and I think it's okay. Like when earlier I was talking about how Soleil guarded against other dogs in a funny way that, you know, we all laughed at that because as animal behavior, you know, knowledgeables, we find that funny. I don't need to do any training about that. All the other dogs comfortably read her and don't approach, right? Mostly. So I think sort of two pathways of thinking about this. We can accept that dogs are going to do this, and if it's not dangerous and it's not hurting them, you know, it could just be a thing that dogs do. But also, if your dog is doing this, they're demonstrating to you that they're upset. So we don't necessarily want our dogs to be being upset. So it is something that we can change the way that they feel, and if we need to, we should, kind of thing.
Right. And I do think that's an interesting point that you bring up because, you know, I get people who come to me with dogs, you know, dogs, of course, will not only will they guard any number of things from food to locations to people to items to objects, but they will also guard from all manner of other beings. So some dogs will only guard from other dogs, but not from people. And some dogs will guard from the family cat, in addition to the people and the dogs. It's all across the board. What you get is kind of everywhere, depending on the individual dog. But, you know, when it's dog, you know, my rule of thumb that I follow is, you know, if it's just an argument, a non-injurious argument, and by non-injurious, I mean both A, there's no physical injuries that require vet care, you know, but B, the dog being guarded against, that, you know, the non-guarder isn't made to feel afraid in their own house and their own skins. I know sometimes it's you know, if it's a really sensitive dog who's now terrified to be in the same room, then that's a psychological injury, so to speak. So as long as there's no injuries, physical or emotional, for the other dog, or for either dog, then I just say, yeah, everybody argues, so do dogs. You know, it's fine. We can let that go and they're going to resolve it. They're good at that. When it's from people, I think it pushes buttons in people to have a human and directed aggression. And even if it's just a snarl or growl, even when they understand it can be hard, or again, if they have children. So you've got the option, if you've got a food bowl garter or a, you know, location garter or whatever, if you've got a garter in your house and you're, you know, it's one or two adults that live with them, you have the option of just going, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, look at that interesting behavior. And just kind of using management and leaving them alone when they have whatever it is that they feel really strongly about, enough to growl. But I think we see it when you have people who have a lot of visitors, people when they have children, because you can't always guarantee that, you know, the 5-year-old running through the kitchen is always going to stop and make sure the dog's not eating food before doing so. So I think sometimes we really do want to use training. We do want to approach it. We do want to address it. And just for the quality of life of the dog, like Kristi said, it's probably not fun to kind of spend half your day with life or death circuitry firing in your brain that my survival is at stake.
And I think there's always a chance, you know, we don't want to constrain our dogs' lives so much that they never have the opportunity to accidentally grab something dangerous. You know, like if your dog is always leashed and walking in heel and you only walk on XYZ streets, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's always stuff in the environment that a dog who guards might grab. And so having them able to give something up to us or having us able to get something from their mouth is it's safe for the human. It's good for the dog because positive reinforcement training, you know, is always fun for dogs, right? So the dogs are going to be having fun as we do this training anyway. And then we have this opportunity.
We can use the training, right? That's the thing. We can do it. We can do it. We can make the dog feel good. And we've got great plans to do it. So why wouldn't we?
So I think this does kind of lead nicely, again, well done to the person who organized the questions, into the next question, which is there's been a change in sort of the ethos about what resource guarding means to humans over the last century. So, and I think personally, and I think Jean is the one who sort of brought this up to us all, and I think it's a really good point. We used to be sort of living under this idea of if a dog has a bone, we leave them alone. Like same as let a sleeping dog lie. You know, it's not really our right to just go and take stuff. And now we're much more in a, oh my goodness, you know, dogs actually get euthanized for very, very mild threat signals, you know, about this stuff. So So I guess it's not really a question, but sort of what are your feels about this? Do you come up against this?
I feel very strongly the way Jean feels about it and the way you feel about it. I will tell you, there's no question, if I got nipped by Dee Dee, my childhood beagle, because I went over and started messing around with her when she was eating her dinner. And if she had nipped me, I can promise you my mother would say, how many times have I told you, don't bother the dog while she's eating? There'd be a little bit of a understanding for normal dog behavior. And that isn't the case now. You're absolutely right. The things that I fear, and I don't blame guardians for this. I think the messaging out there is just really unfortunate. This idea that dogs are robots, that they are, our expectations of their behavior is simply not realistic. I see more and more of that, which concerns me. The idea that dogs have to be completely compliant and behaviorally perfect for what we expect them to be. It's just not realistic. It's certainly unfair. And I worry that people think dogs are supposed to be, but we don't even have those expectations for one another. And yet we put these expectations on dogs, and God forbid they do something that's a normal, we label it as a problem or something to be cracked down on, or we label it as misbehavior when in fact, it's absolutely normal dog behavior. And instead of recognizing that it's a different species that lives in our homes and basically it's a captive animal, instead of recognizing that they come with their own behavioral software, and wow, isn't that fascinating? Sure, we want to change things if they pose a risk, but so many things that dogs do, they're just normal dog behaviors, and everyone labels them as this horrible problem, and then labels the dog guardian as being a bad dog owner. I get so many clients who will say, so-and-so, I was at the dog park and they told me if, my dog does this and some normal fun dog behavior, that I needed to crack down on it. And I just think we're seeing that across the board, that we're not accepting this species for what they are. I tell folks in my orientation, if my puppy class orientation, if you invited, a 12-week-old or a 10-week-old raccoon into your house, and it got up on the counter and ate a loaf of bread, and it pooped on your Oriental rug, nobody would be shocked. You'd go, oh yeah, there's an animal in my house. And of course, if it has access to bread, it's going to eat it. And of course, it's going to pee where it needs to pee in the moment. And it's not going to know the difference between the Sherpa toy I gave him and my Sherpa slipper, or even the couch leg. You would all be like, oh yeah, that's very reasonable. But the second we say it's a domesticated dog, that we expect them to know coming what words mean, being fully house trained, never trying to get access to things that interest them, never barking, never chewing, never digging. It's just, to me, it seems if you get out of the dog species and you put any other dog, any other animal, insert that into that context, and people go, oh, you're right, it is an animal. And I think that we're just seeing it across the board. There's too many TikTok videos, too many YouTube videos of people saying, look at this robot dog that I can control with a remote control. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. And of course, you treat dogs with resource guarding issues using completely force-free, humane, kind methods. But unfortunately, some people don't. So why are aversive methods especially dangerous for dogs who resource guard?
Well, for starters, all you're really doing is changing, what people think of as resource guarding is the dog that freezes and growls and snarls. So if you're using punishment to suppress those behaviors, you're not changing the way the dog feels about your approach and reach and removal of things that to them feel very, very important, survival level important. All you're doing is suppressing the communication, and that's an incredibly dangerous thing. I typically use desensitization and counter conditioning for most resource guarding, although sometimes I'll take an operant approach, meaning I'll use consequence-based, using humane consequences, positive reinforcement, things like for location guarding, teaching a dog to, come away from the location is a very simple way to address that. But for most resource guarding, my goal is going to be to change that underlying feeling that, and by the way, just because guarding is genetic doesn't mean that we can't change that. I always want to make that really clear to my clients. Yes, it's normal. Yes, it's something that comes genetically with our dogs, but so does the software that allows them to learn in real time. So we can change the way they feel. We can teach them, hey, when I approach, when I reach towards them, when I remove something, it predicts something really, really wonderful. Now, I need to navigate that training plan. We do that very carefully, using a dummy object that they don't care about initially. And we build on that until we're able to go up and take, you know, a bully stick that they've been chewing on for a couple minutes. We're able to go and take that from them. And it's because we do a very gradual plan. And the way I move through that plan is by reading dog body language. Is the dog relaxed? Is the dog comfortable? That is a good way. Is the dog kind of wagging and excitedly looking at me like that expectant, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, when I approach? Then I know I get to move on in the training plan. Or is there a little stiffening? Is there a little worry? Do they suddenly put both paws and their nose on the object? Okay, I need to back up. We're not quite there. I'm navigating the training plan based on the dog's body language. So if I have a dog, and sadly this happens, so many dog owners come to me after they've used an uneducated trainer who has usually strapped a shock collar on them or slammed them on their back or done whatever, you know, any number of violent approaches to trying to suppress the behavior of growling and snarling. And now I've got a dog that's no longer really willing to communicate in a normal way because they've got a learning history that when I try to communicate, I'm uncomfortable, something painful happens. So now people are getting close enough to get bit, you know, and that's those bites that happen without warning. And it's so sad to me because someone will say, you know what? She didn't even growl. She didn't. Well, every time they try to communicate in the past, and you want to be careful because people are doing the best they can. You know, they go on the internet and they go dog trainer, Rochester, New York. They're looking for help and they don't know it's an unregulated industry. So I've got to be real careful to say, well, every time that dog got shocked, he told the dog not to growl and communicate their need for distance. So using positive punishment, not only does it not change the motivation for the growling and snarling, which is I'm uncomfortable when someone approaches and I have something of value, we now don't have the communication we need to navigate a training plan, which makes it trickier. It makes it much harder for me, for the owner. Reading the dog's body language is important, and all that positive punishment really does is suppress that. The dog's still upset when you approach when they've got a bone. They just can't say it until the kid gets nailed. And then I worry about that. So, you know, that side effect of, you know, worsening fear and aggression is always there or always certainly a likelihood, I would say. And so would the science, but also now I don't have the blueprint I need to navigate the training plan with. I need to make sure that because every time you push the dog out of their comfort zone during the training, we have a bit of a setback in the process of training. And then of course there's ethics. I don't need to hurt a dog. So of course, why would I? To change behavior. So for all of those reasons, I would not use punishment, positive punishment.
It really ratchets up the danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just the not getting the tells that you're about to get nailed. And then blaming the dog for biting you without a warning. And then, of course, what those trainers will often say is, well, this dog's wired wrong. No, you did this to that dog. And now I've got to try to undo it without any warning communication. So, yeah.
It's a little demoralizing.
It is.
So we've been...
I know someone spent money to do that to their dog to make it worse. Anyway.
And it seems to me that you're probably layering on an additional negative emotional state, you know? So the dog was originally just feeling upset naturally, but now they're in a context and they're getting cues which would predict them to be experiencing. So there's like a conditioned emotional response and a natural emotional response, and they're both
compounded
valences. Yeah.
Worse. Yeah. Now, not only did you not change the way they felt to fix the issue, they feel worse now. You've made it worse.
So we've been talking mostly about helping dogs who already resource guard. And our next question is can we do anything to prevent it? And I think I'm curious, both Zazie, about, you know, is there science about is a practical science about this, and also Lisa, about your experience as a practitioner. What sort of exercises do you do to prevent resource guarding?
So I'll just quickly say then there is some science on this. It shows, for example, that a lot of people miss the less obvious signs. So they spot the growling, for example, but they're less likely to spot the stiffening of the body in the freeze, for example. And it also shows that if people use aversive methods, the resource guarding is likely to be worse, unfortunately. So okay, that's just a brief summary. Lisa, what do you think?
So for me, if I'm lucky enough to get puppies ahead of time, I very much an ounce of prevention, right? In my puppy kindergarten classes, where puppies are all under the age of 16 weeks, I put a huge emphasis on resource guarding prevention. There's a lot of old folklore out there about how to prevent resource guarding, which is actually usually going to make it worse. You used to hear people talk about when your puppy's eating, go put your hand in it and move it around. That's not certainly going to make your dog less likely to feel paranoid that you're coming toward them. So what I ask my puppy owners to do is, when their puppies are young, when they're still in that really spongy developmental stage, while they're eating, walk across the room and drop something even better than their kibble in there, something like a few pieces of chicken or a little bit of cheese, so that they start learning, oh, whenever I've, got this valuable thing and somebody comes over, I get something even better. Like, it's a great thing. Same with object exchanges. If your dog has a toy or a bone or anything that, that the usual suspects, they usually, once they hit sexual maturity, will start guarding, some before then even. I just ask people to go over and, take that bone or toy, give them something delicious, like a little piece of steak, and give them the bone right back. We call them object exchanges. So simply, we want the puppy learning at this really spongy developmental stage that whenever someone approaches and reaches toward me and removes something, I get something fantastic and I get my thing back. It doesn't predict the end of something good. So, repeatedly doing that over time, you just get a dog who feels really good about people approaching. So sometimes we can circumvent it. I don't know. I'm glad you asked that question about the studies, Kristi, because certainly the laws, behavior is lawful. So the science of animal learning would tell us that, teaching a dog that our approach and reach and removal of something using Pavlovian conditioning,
It should work. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It makes sense that
there's any studies on the books. I wonder if there's any studies, and if not, it would be terrific to see that. If those preventative exercises in the young developmental stage do pay off once dogs hit sexual maturity.
It certainly makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I would have to believe at least it would be a lot easier to modify in a dog that has a learning history of people approaching and reaching and removing things, predicting something good.
As a puppy. Yeah, especially as a puppy. And you'd think, like, if the first 5 times a person took something away from a puppy, it was a training trial, and they got something fantastic. It would boggle if that didn't have an impact on their brains,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it probably would depend on the individual dogs, because there are those global guarders. There are guarders that they don't care about a carrot if you handed it to them, but if it fell off the counter between 2 dogs, an all-out brawl because the suddenness of this food coming up while stew is cooking on the stovetop. I've seen it. Clearly, this is a scenario I've actually seen.
Theoretically. Not any one of my clients. Yeah.
May have fallen. So yeah, I think it behooves us to when our puppies are young and they're impressionable and they're learning, that we teach them that, the same way we do with teaching them that all manner of body handling is predictive of something good, or how to cooperate in their own veterinary care. We can teach them that, we can, the giving and taking of items and such. I think it's certainly worth doing. And so I certainly instruct my puppy clients to do those exercises,
Great, thank you.
I try and Sorry, go ahead, Zazie.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say we need to move on in a moment to the news and book section. And I want to make sure that I get in a thank you to Lisa, not just for all the wonderful information she's told us, but also because when my book WAG came out, Lisa was incredibly supportive, and you've regularly given away a copy of WAG to one of your clients.
So good.
And the thing is, every time you share why this person has won, and we get to read the story about how they have worked with their dog, and it is so inspiring to see how hard people have worked, what they've learned how to do, and how much they've done to help resolve their dog's issue, and they've been successful. And it's just wonderful to see these beautiful stories of how people have worked with their dog under your guidance. So thank you very, very much for that. It's been so inspirational.
I love my clients and I adore you, and it's such a great marriage of two things. I'm so proud of clients who get it. You know, they just get it. And the ones that are simpatico, and sometimes they come through some difficult challenges, but they do such a beautiful job. And they're on the same, in the same frame of mind as you. And I think, by the way, I don't always say this, and I should respond with a lot of those folks, when they get that book, they always check back in with me to say what a great book it was. So it's a perfect positive reinforcement for clients that, are doing such good work. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's lovely to hear. And we're moving on to the book section. And I have some book news to share first, because I have the very exciting news that I'm now working on my third book, which is provisionally called Shiver. And it's all about the science of helping fearful dogs feel safe. And it's going to be a lot like WAG. So if you liked WAG and you like all the tips based on the science, you'll find Shiver takes a very, very similar approach. So I'm super excited about that, but it won't be out until 2024. So it's a little bit too early to pre-order, but if people follow my blog, they'll get to find out when that's going to happen. So that's very exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So with the books, first, I'll start with what the book club is reading right now, which is An Immense World by Ed Yong. And we've been taking 2 months over this book because, as you can see, it's quite a thick book, and we wanted to make sure that we had the time to savor and enjoy it properly. And it's a really fascinating book about the Umwelt of different animals. So we understand our own bodily experiences, and they help us see what the world is like. But for other animals, we can use dogs as an example. They don't use their eyes as much. They're not as important as their nose for them. They see things through smell, basically, first and foremost. And so there are so many different animals in this book, but each chapter takes a different sense. And so you can read all about creatures that have multiple eyes that point in different directions, or whatever, how different animals experience pain, or some of them don't experience pain in response to capsaicin from peppers, for example. So very different from us. And it's a really interesting read. And of course, it's by Ed Yong. You know that he's a brilliant writer. A lot of people are very familiar with his writing already. So it's a really great read. And if anyone wants to join the book club, by the time this goes out, you'll have missed this book and we'll have moved on to another one. But if you want to join us, subscribe to my newsletter and your companionanimalpsychology.com, and you can join us there. So Lisa, what are you reading at the moment?
I actually just finished the Book of Hope, Jane Goodall and Douglas Abrams. I loved it. First of all, I want to thank my friend, my very sweet friend, Maricel Brown. She gifted this to me before I went away on a trip. And it's really lovely. Basically, it maps out, some of the most difficult experiences in Jane Goodall's life. So everything from, World War II in England, right through all of her experiences in different parts of the world. And basically those darkest hours where she found inspiration. And what's interesting is, because she's so well traveled and she really does immerse herself into so many different cultures, she's got so many great stories about, the different indigenous people when she would be kind of, in those areas, like facing insurmountable challenges, that they were able to forward their goal and how they were able to do it. And it just was a really, it was just a very gentle book. I can't explain it better than that. She, I think it was mostly done as interview. So Douglas Abrams interviewed her. He would put a tape recorder out, and then he would, then he wrote the book out of that. And what I find fascinating, and it's something I find it's usual with so many when I find somebody that I admire so much, they have this quality, their first response off the cuff is so eloquent and like, it's just like conversational wisdom. I would have to say any of the things Jane Goodall says in here, it would take me 3 weeks of writing and rewriting and rewriting, and it would still never come close. There's so much wisdom that she shares, and it's done really gently. So I just loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was a very simple, comforting read. So I highly recommend it if you need an easy beach read.
Awesome. Thank you. That sounds great. I like the idea of a gentle book as well in these difficult times. Gentle and full of wisdom sounds perfect. Yeah,
That's exactly
Kristi.
what it's for.
Yeah, Kristi, what are you reading right now?
So I'm not reading anything gentle or full of wisdom, but I recently started doing a new sports endeavor despite my advanced age, roller derby, which is a full contact sport on roller skates. And I'm finding being an adult beginner, typically I don't like being an adult beginner. I find it hard, and I find it hard to accept criticism, and I don't think I'm unusual in that. But for some reason, going in with absolutely no skills at all to a completely new environment has been like super fun. I'm finding it for almost the first time just really fun to be a beginner and just really accept my role as like an abject beginner and to be learning. And I feel like I'm getting a lot of really cool ideas from the people that I'm with about how to create really safe, inclusive spaces for people who have different abilities and different skills and different bodies and different ages. So it's been like a great learning experience, and there's a lot of camaraderie, and also I really like hitting people really hard with my body. So it's been a lot of like, interesting learning about myself and just super fun. So I did my first ever scrimmage this weekend with other people playing against them. And so I'm like, I gotta learn the rules. I don't want to get I don't want to get that many, what's it called? They send you to like the penalty box if you make a grievous error.
I'm so impressed. Please, will you just read the title and the author out again?
It's called The Roller Derby Blueprint, and it's Scott McNamara. That must be his derby name.
Do you have a derby name?
I do.
What is it?
It's Prixie.
Oh, fantastic.
I love it. You're very brave to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. I would spend all the time falling onto my butt the whole time, so I wouldn't get very far. I wouldn't move from one place to another.
Here's the real thing though, is everybody falls all the time. Literally, you're always falling. So you learn how to fall. I mean, there's a lot of like life lessons there. You learn how to fall so that you don't hurt yourself. But if you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough. You're not pushing your own envelope enough. So yeah. I say, because I fall all the time.
The next roller derby book.
Yeah.
Roller derby starting at midlife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I 100% recommend.
Cool. So I am reading Still I Cannot Save You by Kelly S. Thompson, and its subtitle is A Memoir of Sisterhood, Love and Letting Go. So it's a memoir about her relationship with her older sister, who had cancer as a toddler, and then at some point in life became addicted to opioids and cocaine. So it became quite a troubled relationship. And then the sister got clean, they managed to rebuild their relationship. And then just when things seemed to be going well, there's another bombshell that hits them. And I'm not going to say what that was. I don't want to spoil the story, but it's heartbreaking and beautiful. It made me cry, but it's very much about the love between two sisters and the bond that they have, and how it kind of endures somehow despite all the things that they've been going through. So it's an absolutely wonderful book, and it's an emotional read, but I really recommend it. It's just beautiful, basically. So great. Well, thank you. So, Lisa, thank you so much for coming to chat with us today and for sharing all of your wisdom. It's been absolutely wonderful to chat with you. If people want to know more about you, where should they go to find out?
My website. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for that one.
Your website?
At dogeducated.com. We're also on Facebook. We are on Instagram, but we don't use it very frequently. I've got to get better at the social media stuff. Mostly what you're going to find is our pictures of graduates, many class graduates. There's a blog section. I just need to get back to work on it a little bit more. There's a small blog section.
Well,
And
actually,
Lisa has written a couple blogs for the Academy too, which are very well written and well considered. So
yes, I was about to say your blog posts are fantastic. They're definitely well worth a read. So that's dogeducated.com. Thank you very much then, Lisa. That's fantastic. And to everybody watching this, please hit the subscribe button so that you make sure you never miss a future episode. Thank you very much for watching this, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
bye.
Bye.